Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, Lessons from a Sporting Life, Helping Teachers Foster Resilience and a Growth Mindset in All Students, with Rhys Thomas, former Welsh Rugby international and now a mental health campaigner. I'm Anne Moroz, former editor of TES and your facilitator for this session. Also joining us is Claire Wensley, Head of Sales at Compass Education. Can you please submit any questions for Rhys in the chat? But do note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared on social media. So please be careful if you're talking about pupils, not to say anything that might identify them. But first, let's hear from Claire. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Anne. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thanks. So, yeah, we've been doing a lot of work in Wales with Compass around the sort of well-being and mental health of children in Wales in schools. The research has been really, really interesting. The findings of the research have been really interesting. And the crux of it is that students within schools are actually masking how badly their mental health has been affected by lots of different things. I'm not going to go through what's written on the slide. I mean, you can read that for yourselves. But if you do want to read a little bit more into the findings that we had from the research, we do have a copy of the report that can be downloaded from the website. So if you, at the end of the webinar, would like a copy of that, you can just go on our website under Wellbeing and Mental Health and find that report to download. It's really interesting, obviously, how this has all come together and how sport is now feeding into this as well. So I'll pass back to Anne to introduce Rhys, and then we can move forward with that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Claire. And we're now going to move over to Rhys to hear his inspirational story. And please don't forget to submit questions for him in the chat. Over to you, Rhys.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Claire. So I'm just going to get straight into it. I'm going to give a little bit of a background about myself and how I ended up in this position that I am today. So I was actually born in South Africa, in Johannesburg. I moved over to the UK from Johannesburg in the year 2000. I moved to Newport, where in pursuit of a professional international rugby career, to which I achieved. I was actually a 10-year professional. I played pro rugby up until 2012, during which time I predominantly played for Newport, the Dragons and the Scarlets. I actually also during that time accumulated 7 caps for Wales, winning the Grand Slam in 2008 with Warren Gatland in his first stint. And all of this was just going amazingly. I'd actually in 2012, in my final year of contract with the Scarlets, agreed to sign a very large 6-figure contract to move me abroad to France, to a club called Biarritz. And I actually had a huge heart attack in the gym at the Parky Scarlets on the 26th of January in 2012. Now, this unfortunate event led to me having a quadruple bypass and because of that, a career-ending injury. This in itself was a challenge that I was wholly unprepared for, mentally, emotionally, and after this operation, I was pretty much broken physically. My capacity to do any exercise whatsoever was greatly reduced. I was basically disabled. I couldn't even walk 10 meters without being completely out of breath. And then dealing with the end of my career, that loss of identity, that loss of purpose, led me on a really dark journey of what was initially a physical battle, which really became a huge mental battle that led me down this very dark path that took me through alcoholism, sadly, even after being through multiple operations on a heart transplant waiting list with a machine that to this day still keeps me alive, called a left ventricular assist device. I was an alcoholic even through those years. Had a great support network, good family, wife, children, and it still wasn't enough to prevent me from going to those depths. Now, on the back end of that, I finished my drinking career on the 1st of September in 2019, to which point I ended up in rehab in early 2020. And on the back end of that rehab, I had kind of a somewhat of an awakening and a reshift in purpose and identity. This led me to coming out of rehab with a very clear purpose, a why, and that was to try and help others. And at this juncture, I met and teamed up with an old rugby friend of mine who was my first captain when I came to Wales from South Africa. His name was Matthew Creel. And we created what is today a mental health and wellbeing charity in South Wales called TidyButt. And over the last 3.5 years, we've become an established mental health and wellbeing charity that has delved into the education sector. Very unexpectedly, it was never an intention of ours. When we began this journey, it was a journey for us both of us had suffered with mental health and addiction, depression, severe anxiety, even suicidal thoughts. All of these range of lived experiences was what brought this charity to be. And we ended up through the need and the feeling of us to share our lived experiences with mental, emotional, and physical health issues, for us to create, a talk, create workshops, create an out for students and others like us, other people from every sector, from education to corporate. And it's been quite the revelation. So what has my experience been in the education sector? Well, it has been an absolute roller coaster, to be honest with you. We ended up getting our first opportunity in South Wales with Torvine as the whole of Torvine, every high school there. And from there, we ended up going through to Blaina, Newport, almost all of the Catholic schools in Wales, Cardiff. And then we found ourselves in the alternative education sector, we had national contracts with iTech and ACT, where we go to all of their establishments throughout Wales. And it's really just been an eye-opening experience for the last 3.5 years of us trying to, in collaboration with the education sector, the schools, particular schools, alternative and mainstream, to try and come up with ways and means, tangible ways and means too, for us to give students the tools and also the education for us to be able to help them in some way, shape, or form. And this kind of led us on to our kind of our values, our kind of we believe in this word of educate, support, and empower. Because through our experience of what we were seeing in schools, if you could just flick to the next slide, yeah. Oh, sorry, that one. So, these were what we thought, was needed to change within what we were witnessing. We were seeing a lot of change in schools, a lot of children being very disassociated from the education sector, feeling out of touch. I think on the back end of what we witnessed with COVID, the destruction and the devastation that kind of left in its wake with regards to the children, with the learners being in isolation, and we saw what that did for human beings alone, never mind students that were in particularly challenging environments. And we kind of came through this process of understanding about, like, how do we create change, actual change? And we realized pretty quickly that wasn't actually possible, because that everyone would have to be in. It would be a collaborative effort. It would be in conjunction with the government, with the education sector, with teachers, with the learners, to create real change. Because one little drop in the ocean, as a charity that wants to do good, was a very strenuous laborious, and to be honest with you, a thankless job that was getting us nowhere as a charity. So our experience was trying to actually come up with different things. What could we give students that's going to be educational, that will help them, but also at the end of the day, because no one's going to do it for them, how are they actually going to be empowered to do what is necessary to make the changes that are going to have a positive impact on their lives? And we believe this came through many ways. And a greater self-awareness is one of the things that we believe that is absolutely pivotal for our learners. And how do we create this? How do we create a greater self-awareness? Well, I believe it has to come from a young age. And we need a big shift. I believe we need a big shift in the way that the current how it is running, the education system as a whole. Being a little bit more pupil-centric in regards to, well-being as not as an industry, but as a way of being. And how do we create wellness? Although we say it's going to be in the syllabus and we're going to change these things, nothing's actually really changed as such, I believe. Not the things that are necessary to make the changes that are going to be necessary, especially upcoming for what we have in future with, with automation and artificial intelligence and these things that are going to be very challenging for us, not only as a society, but as young learners, as they become more disengaged because of this, the reduction in their attention spans because of social media, because of tech, gaming, computers, etc., which ultimately is becoming incredibly stressful for teachers. The environment for teachers to learn, to teach, to work. I have a tremendous amount of compassion, actually, for the environments in which teachers are thrust into on a daily basis. And I'll talk a little bit more of that later on. But so it's about us. We're trying to create an environment for children to thrive, for learners to thrive, young adults. And, we believe that through, practical learning, through emotional expression, through these types of workshops that we were running, we could create this tangible, educational, empowering type of learning within a very small space of time, which also through our experience over the course of these last 3.5 years has really taught us that a lot of these learners learn a hell of a lot more, sometimes not being in the classroom than being in the classroom. We also do adventure days with the charity where we take especially children in the alternative education sector, where we take them out to places perhaps that they haven't been. We're talking about the more traumatized children in our education sector, in very impoverished areas, taking them gorge walking, rock climbing, just giving them experiences that they wouldn't have had. And this is funded, which is also incredibly rewarding experience to be able to do so. But it also just is a glaring hole in where I believe maybe the education sector mainstream could maybe improve or shift its way of thinking, albeit I understand we're bound by finances and practicalities and red tape. Of course, and I understand that. And this is the challenge we face, I think. And more importantly, also from a young age, is mindfulness. Because it's not going to be possible to be able to go to a sixth former and be able to change the way in which students think. It's not going to be possible. This is going to have to come in at a much younger age, where we're talking and teaching students how to sit in stillness, how to meditate, how to be in prayer, and all different types of prayer for all types of religion, whether it's whether we're Muslims, Christians, whether we're nothing at all. How do we use that moment of stillness to connect to ourselves, ultimately? And using other somatic types of practices, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, these types of mindfulness, breath work to regulate their nervous systems and a greater understanding of self. So I think these things are important moving forward if we were to truly change the wellness within the schools as a whole. So if we just go on to the next slide, Mark, please. So back to Mark, to before the Educate Empower support. Yeah, so this is the things that through observation from being in both sectors, alternative and mainstream, these are the things that are glaringly obvious that I believe need changing. And as a charity, in fact, that not only if I think if this doesn't change, I just can't see how it's going to be sustainable for teachers or for students, because I think for students, for teachers, the ever increasing stress that these environments are providing are going to see a huge increase in burnout, breakdowns, and sadly even suicide. So and a loss of work within the profession itself. So how is this going to be challenged? I don't know. I mean, can this be changed? I don't believe that if it's not changed, it's going to actually be a huge problem. Mobile phones are a massive issue. They're a massive issue in society. They're incredibly addictive, not only just to us as adults, who actually some of us, or many of us, were fortunate enough to not have these things growing up, but they are unbelievably addictive, to the point where I even get sometimes addicted by them. But then, because of my experience and my age, I know that it's having a deep impact and effect on me, mentally, emotionally, and physically. But like, imagine us in school, if we were to bring in, our decks, our Walkman, our our TV, our Sega 360, and put them all on our desk, and just, and the teachers asking us what we were up to. And in my day, I would have had a clip around the ear, but this is what the phones are, and so much more. And then the reality is that the phones also have a very dark side. Porn use. I think some of the greatest use of porn, or sadly, is between 12 and 16. And of course, this is going to be during school time too. So it's having a huge impact. Attention spans of students, the distractive nature of them. So this is an area I believe is essential moving forward for the school system as a whole, and for our learners to get time away from these things as well, just for their own well-being, mental and emotional health. Getting the learners more active, because what we're observing actually in schools is that the sport is dropping off as a whole. Less students participate in PE, in sport in general. The number of sports teams is being reduced massively, to the point where some schools are struggling to actually get teams to put out for first teams in school in sixth forms, which is highly concerning, not only for sport in Wales, but for also the kids in general. And I realize this has nothing to do with teachers or the education sector. This is a societal issue. But at the same time, this crosses over into these environments. And I believe it's an opportunity for the education sector to be actually a pillar of strength, and to be an opportunity for us to offer a break from these things, and creating more activity. Because when they go home, very often now we're going to see with learners that they're on their phones, games. If you actually speak to students, I was actually with students in a comp recently, year 10s in Crossy-Kiliog, dealing with young carers. So 10 young carers from year 10, year 9s and 10. And very, very disturbing information coming from them in regards to loneliness, in regards to struggling with connection, with friendships. Highly distressing, to be honest with you. And the lack of activity of them doing the most basic fundamental things, such as walking, getting out of the house. Like, I mean, it is, to be honest with you, I find it quite terrifying, if I'm honest. about the speed in which the regression we're finding with young learners and the impact it's having on their mental health. I mean, we're talking about the highest rates currently of suicide in the UK between 13 and 19-year-olds. So we are facing a critical point, a juncture, a watershed moment, I actually believe, with whether I believe the schools have an opportunity to be of great service to parents who perhaps right now aren't able to say no, that aren't able to offer an environment outside of school that can be productive and not productive, but be beneficial for the learners in every way, developmentally, emotionally, physically, because they may not be getting that at home in those environments. So there's a lot of benefits that we can be achieved by just hitting on these points, we believe. But ultimately as well is the basics, the fundamentals, the diet, right? And the ban on caffeine drinks. I think the science behind these drinks is really worrying. The neuro damage that it's doing to young people especially. The impact of the sugar dumps, the caffeine dumps that we're getting, the food that's being served in the cafeterias. Yeah, I mean, to what extent is that your roles? How much does that cost? You know, these are the things I am unaware of. I'm not, you know, experienced enough to be able to cost. You know, these are just opinions, and whether they're achievable or not, I'm not sure, and maybe just good for a discussion. But yeah, these are things I think that would have a huge impact. So just 4 points that would have a huge shift in the way in which learners are showing up right now, and making things a lot easier for teachers in these environments. So if you just want to go through, Mark. And again. Yeah, and one more. So there you go. So finally, you know, I think most importantly is, you know, as important it is that these environments that in this education sector are good for learners. I think it's important to mention that it's got to be good for teachers too. In fact, it's paramount, because if teachers are struggling, if they are strung out, if they are stressed, then how can they possibly be of service to our young people in our society? And I think the majority of teachers that we speak to anyway, they are stressed, massively stressed, because these environments are struggling. There's a lack of discipline in schools. I don't know how to fix that, by the way. You know, it's societal again, I believe, in so many ways. But how do teachers begin to look after themselves? And I also, in my newer life, am a breathwork practitioner. I'm a breathwork coach. I deal with functional ways of us to look after ourselves through breath techniques, but also by dealing with nervous system regulation. So I believe it's important for teachers to identify, you know, a system, like what systems are in place. You know, there's a good burnout assessment called BAT 24 or 23, sorry. There's also the 12 question questionnaire of BAT, which is just a basic fundamental burnout test, just to see where you're at. You know, how maybe doing that once in a while just to see, you know, your levels of stress and burnout. But also, like, how often are teachers getting counseling? Because in the environments I'm seeing in education and in alternative, it is, I mean, it is, I think it's necessary. But there is a number of techniques that I would recommend. Now, you know, obviously going from lesson to lesson in the typical school day, you know, how are we able to, which is inevitable when we get aroused by, and I mean in the nervous system, when we get hyper aroused by a situation where we get flustered, frustrated, we get angry. How do we regulate ourselves so that that doesn't trickle on into the next lesson? How do we take a time out, go away, be able to take 5 minutes, address this with nervous system regulation through breath, maybe even having a protocol where there's a teacher or a friend, someone that we can just have a 5-minute chat with after our breath work, just so that we're down regulated, we're able to then re-enter to those environments and not be open to being triggered again, and then a cascade of potential unfortunate series of events that would no one would want to be in that situation. So like some very basic breath work I can recommend in this situation. I can name a couple of techniques which I can drop into this to Mark and perhaps afterwards. There is ones like a box breath. We can use just a 4-second inhale through the nose, a 4-second hold at the top, a 4-second exhale all through the nose, and a 4-second hold. And if we just do this for about 5 minutes, 4, 4, 4, 4, or 5, 5, 5, 5, whichever's dependent on your breathing ability and your level of stimulation, you'll be able to just begin to gently bring down your state into a more rest and digest. Or anything with an extended exhale. So you can do like a 3-6, 3-second inhale, 6-second exhale, and just do that for 5 minutes. There's an app that I can recommend. It's free. It's on the App Store. It's called Breathing App, and it's just got some very basic applications, and it's very easy for us just to put it on for 5 minutes, listen to the noise, be guided by that breath, bring our nervous system back down from being out of our window of tolerance, which overstressed or understressed, and then back into that space of rest and digest. So there's some very functional ways of us to regulate our nervous systems in these times of being highly stressed, to bring ourselves back into a state of focus, clarity, restfulness, to be able to deliver and also speak and address our young learners in a very competent way, even after being triggered in a very short space of time. So yeah, and there's lots of other things that I would recommend. How do we become more resilient? How do we become more resilient as teachers, as students? And we can do this through many ways, but hot and cold exposure, especially as adults, is a fantastic way to do so. I would highly recommend, if you're not already applicating this into your daily routine, hot and cold exposure is a wonderful tool. Obviously, if your nervous system's already not in a great place, I would recommend you just give yourself some time to down-regulate yourself over a period of a week to a couple of weeks before you begin engaging in these activating techniques, which are very helpful in building resilience in our nervous system, and in doing so, making ourselves more resilient to stress. And ultimately, and it's the big one, is sleep. And this is for learners too, and teachers. But it's so important. It's the foundation of human health. And if we're not sleeping, we're not recovering, we're not resting, everything is more intense, our emotional states, our mood swings. So it is for a foundation, and it's it's such a overlooked part of our well-being. And we go into schools and we ask this question all the time, who had less than 5 hours sleep last night? And it is an absolutely horrifying sight to see more than half of the class put their hands up, which is very often the case, sadly, including teachers at time, I must add. So it is a question of, why is this? Why is it at this point? And then it goes back to the state of mind. Do you need counseling? Are you sleeping correctly? Is your diet good? Is your nervous system overstimulated through the amount of stress that you're facing? So it's kind of like a loop, right? And how can we begin to look after ourselves to be more resilient, but also to take better care of ourselves? And it's about taking care of us, and in doing that, in turn, your learners too, and your environment that you're working in. So yeah, that is in a nutshell. Unless there's another slide, Mark. I don't believe there is, but I'm very open to any questions, or to anything that maybe you may have a burning desire to share with us. If there's time, Mark. Anne?
Okay, thanks very much, Rhys. Um, that was incredible, especially listening to your life story. I mean, you overcame huge adversity, and when you were told that the injury you sustained was career ending, what was your first thought?
Oof. I froze, Anne. I didn't think.
You just didn't.
I went into a deep state of freeze. It was like a trauma response, I believe.
Yeah.
I had no thought. I felt a deep state of devastation.
And your journey from that point to now,
Mm,
when you look back,
mm,
what do you think? Do you think, oh my God, I don't actually believe that I did that?
yeah.
Or yeah, or
Yeah, I
how
mean,
did I do that? The human
yeah,
condition, how strong is that? That is resilience, isn't
yeah.
it?
Oh,
Even though you
absolutely.
had setback after setback, it's,
Mm,
you persevered. And that's really, really important, I think, for young people to know that
yeah.
whatever happens to you, it doesn't stop here. There's many, many more years of life where you'll be able to look back and say, actually, I did well. But
Mm.
at that time you feel everything is lost.
You do. And I believe it's part of the human experience, and that we have to sometimes experience deep amounts of suffering, of the dark night of the soul, in order for us to shift our reality and our perspective. And sadly, sometimes that does mean that some people don't come out of that darkness. But fortunately for me, and for a lot of other people that I know, um, that situation, even though I didn't go through a 7-year cycle of destruction, and I lost a great deal of myself and my destruction within my own family, um, it's allowed me to change my perspective, but also my trajectory, but and also to end a cycle of at least 6 generations of alcoholic men in my family, and to show that I've been 5 years sober, just about, and that,
Congratulations.
thank you, and that change is possible. And albeit when you thought that life couldn't be getting any worse, um, it couldn't really get any better, to be honest with
Right. That's,
Rhys, I
yeah.
have a question, if you don't mind.
you. Of
Yeah,
course.
please
Obviously,
do.
obviously, sport was obviously a really massive part of your life for a very long time. And
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, as you were talking, that fewer children are now getting involved in sport. How how can schools and educators encourage children to get more and more involved in sport, and what sort of benefits
Mhm.
do you think that has on their mental well-being?
Yeah, so I mean, movement's such a fundamental part of wellness, right? Um, Albeit I think the strange part about where we are right now, and this is like the trade-off we're getting, is the social media aspect of a lot of this, the social media life, this facade, this fake non-reality masks that we wear, right? Like, and while you're seeing so many young learners in schools dressing inappropriately, I believe, and a lot of makeup, and a lot of things that I don't think are necessary in the education space. But obviously, it's not just that space anymore, because, as you know, even teachers are getting photographs taken of them and put onto social media sites, and unfortunate things and jokes and all these things, right? Which is why I believe they should be banned straight, like non-negotiable. But also, like, I think if they weren't in schools, phones in general, if kids knew that no one would be taking photos of them whilst they're exercising, or the threat of them being taken a photograph of whilst they were changing or in the toilet, like this would take the fear. And it is a fear because these children have a tremendous amount of fear about the fear of judgment, and it can be life damaging. That's the reality of it. If someone were to take an image of a student, in their, let's say that they were changing from their school kit to their PE kit, and an image was taken and then put online, and that student didn't want it to be on there. That could cause a tremendous amount of distress, and even physical harm if that student was in that kind of mindset. So, like, I think not only is the phone ban beneficial for education, but it's beneficial for movement. And I think that the movement element needs to be elevated within the learning. And this is where I think the way that schools is running currently, I think that a lot more activity needs to be brought in. I think you can see through the obesity crisis, the diets that children are eating, and it's not their fault. I understand this, right? It's a societal issue, and I'm not blaming anyone. It's just a fact. It's where we're at, and I think sport is on the decline. I think if you just look in the uptake of, I think other than girls and women's sport in Wales with rugby, football, etc., which are on the up massively, which is amazing news. This is great. Like, this is, we want this equality. We want the same offerings for all sexes, right? But like, ultimately, the game, and this is the truth, it's going the other way for boys and men, especially in rugby. And it's sad. And the WRU has allowed this to happen because of the lack of funding that they put in. But on the other hand, you've got the FAW who have taken advantage of that. And that's great. And good on them for investing into the game in Wales. If they want to do it, then good on them. Then they deserve our best athletes in Wales. So, it is a struggle. It is a struggle. And ultimately, it is fundamental for us as human beings to move. Now, different ways of moving is also good, and to us to be mindful of different abilities. Different students are going to be at different physical abilities, and it's not like the 80s or the 90s where we can just all just throw everyone under the same hat and like, go on, do it, like beast them. And it's not going to be like that anymore. But if they've got to like walk a mile, 2 miles, or at least they're walking it, great. It's a struggle, Claire. That's the truth.
Yeah,
There'll always be students who won't sort of do the exercise,
Yeah,
but
of
you
course.
still want those students to benefit from the things that you learn from exercise. The mindset, the discipline that
Yeah.
exercise gives them. So how can you give that to those students?
I think you've got to make it fun, and I know it's the old cliche, right? But I think all of these things that we're looking about, how do we make kids more resilient? Because we're coming through this yes culture. We're unable to say no as parents, and it's causing a very big problem with discipline, with the ability to be resilient. We get in, wrapped in cotton wool too much, right? Like, it's just gone the other way, and that's okay. Like, do you know what I mean? We got treated a certain way, and we just wanted to treat our kids different. But it's been like a bit of a social experiment, and I mean, so far not so good. And so it's like, obviously, sport creates resilience. It creates connection. It creates working towards a common cause. self-esteem. And of course, sometimes when we lose, it's not nice, but again, that's another lesson, right? So I think it's about like, how do we make things fun? And we've got so many different ways and means and understanding about exercise now. So like, what does movement look like? We've got, as just for example, with our charity, some of the workshops we offer, we offer expressive art, bushcraft, mental toughness, meditation and breathwork, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, nutrition, beatboxing. So like these are activities that are getting people moving. It's somatic, right? Like, how do we create, movement that's unusual, like tight, something that's low, even, like Tai Chi or Qigong or like yoga. And I think people they're all too fast to dismiss these things. But what are they? They're so great for you. They're great for stillness. It's great for movement. It's great for connection to breath. And I think if we do it from a young enough age in the school systems, it'll become like you look in China and Indonesia with these schools where you've got these hordes of kids sat in squares meditating, and it's beautiful. Like, like
And they do a
why?
sort of morning exercise as well, don't they? So they
Yes,
start
yeah,
school really early, and you see sort of hundreds of children in the
yeah.
playground, whatever, all doing stretching and whatever. So that'd be
And I
interesting if we
think,
could introduce it here.
yeah, and we've got to work with our culture, right? Let's be
Yeah.
honest. Out of the kids that are coming to our schools in the mornings, how many of them have had sugary cereal for breakfast?
Mm.
How many of them have had toast or sweets before they've come into school? Well, I can tell you, I live in Killeen, and there's a Sainsbury's, and I'd say half of the school goes in Sainsbury's before school, and they mention on sweets and crisps, so they're going to have that sugar dump, right? So we're talking like 90 minutes into the school day, you got students that all look like they want to go to sleep,
Yeah,
unless they
then
go and
suddenly get the dip, don't they?
yeah, they
So
get the
after
dip,
the
right?
sugar rush has worn off, then you go, zoom down.
Exactly. And then
So
they go and get
you
a cafe.
obviously want to
Yeah.
change quite a lot of things, and you had the 4 things that you want to change. I
Yeah.
mean, I want to make you just pick one. If I said to you, I'm your fairy
Yeah.
godmother, you can have one of those 4 things. Which one would you do?
Oh, easy. Phone.
Phone. Okay. And
Easy.
so,
No brainer.
obviously, the schools can do their best with phones, but it's sometimes obviously it's not only the pupils, it's the parents. But do
Yeah.
you think it should be the government that's mandating this? Do you think there should be a ban on smartphones for children until they're 16, 18? Or how do you think we should do this?
I think there should be a government level, absolute zero tolerance ban on mobile phones in school. They literally, when they go in school in the morning, I don't know if I'm sure there would be companies, if not from the government, that would give grants for these like types of boxes that they put on the walls. That you can see that the student comes in, they put their phone in their little place,
Hmm.
and they get blanket blocked. They can't get open. There's not a code for them. They get put in, they're locked. And the harsher we start that rule with, if it gets caught with, phone's gone for a week. But because they are so addicted to these phones right now, as we are as a culture, as a society, this is not just the kids. Like, this is not children. This is not young adults. This is the learners. This is society. And if we don't get on top of it before it's too late, we won't be able to take the phones away from them, because literally they will be having a breakdown. And this may happen already because they are so addicted to their mobile phones that they'll be impossible to remove them from them, because they are literally will be going into like cold turkey.
And is there anything that schools and parents can do to educate the pupils on how to use social media safely or effectively? Or do you think just take it away?
No, I absolutely believe there should be education around it, but is that your guys' jobs? I don't know. I think it should be the government's job. It should be the social media giants' job. It should be big tech's job. It should be their absolute necessity as those people that are giving us these tools, these machines, these things, and they know the damage that is doing to young developing brains, that it is doing to the offloading of reward chemicals like dopamine, that is creating this addictive nature for games, for phones, but also from social media, and the damage that it's having on children for image, for the comparison. Like, where's the accountability of these people? It's a disgrace. They are a disgrace, and the government shouldn't stand for it just because they get in backhands and they get in money from these companies, probably large amounts, or tax breaks or whatever they're getting from them, that they're not making the rules against them, when I don't believe that that should be the truth. There's got to be accountability, because ultimately it's falling on teachers and it's falling on the students. And until that is taken into account and changed, like, we're all on, because if my child was to go back into school right now, by the way, I would home educate. That's what I would be doing anyway.
Okay. We won't go there.
Yeah. But
You're
if
quite
I were
hard
to,
line on this.
if I
You're
were
quite
to,
hard line.
yeah.
So if you take away the phones, then perhaps you'll get the other thing you want, which is children may play more sport. They may move around more. So, if you get rid of one, you may get the other. So you may get two wishes, Rhys, in the end, if with that. But thank you very much. We're going to now go over to Claire for some final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Rhys. It's been really interesting. I mean, particularly for me, I've got two children in the school system in Wales, two primary school level children. One is the sporty one who likes to go and move and do a gymnastics 4 nights a week. The other one would much rather sit down in front of a television of an evening and just not do anything. So yeah, I can completely understand the struggle there in terms of getting them to move a little bit more. But just going back to what we started on in terms of the report that Compass has commissioned around mental wellbeing in Wales, as every school leader knows, to address the issue, you've got to have the means to tackle it. So you've got to have the tools available to you to monitor the sort of wellbeing issues that are prevalent within the Welsh school sector. And this is especially true of behaviour and wellbeing in schools. And as a parent, like I said, of school-aged children in Wales, I'm really, really interested in how schools are addressing student wellbeing. And as the results of the survey that we carried out showed, it's really clear that parents in Wales are extremely concerned that too many of their children are struggling with mental health issues. And what's more, they suspect that many of them are going to sort of really great lengths to hide the problems from their parents and from their peers and teachers as well. And I share those concerns. Even at primary level, I see that my children are being affected by certain things that are going on. So it's not just at secondary level, it's at primary level as well. And people in the community are going to schools for support, and having spent the majority of my career in the education sector, I can understand why. And judging from the responses to our survey, most parents really, really appreciate that teachers are doing as well as they can in challenging circumstances to give students what help that they can give. But like I said, to be able to assess things, they need some sort of way of being able to accurately record behaviour, to track it over time, and also allow teachers to analyse it and report on it. And that's where Compass is really, really strong. So obviously Compass is a management information system used in over 3,500 schools across Australia, Ireland and the UK. And one of our sort of hero modules within Compass is Chronicle. And the reason it's such a good module for schools is that it allows schools to monitor student wellbeing accurately and in real time. And it's really, really adaptable. It's really flexible. It's all template driven. So basically schools can create the templates that they need and use it in the way that they want to record and to monitor behaviour and wellbeing concerns throughout the school. So it can be configured to support additional learning needs. It can be used to record and refer safeguarding issues. You can reward positive behaviour, analyse trends over time, and produce automatic reports for parents and for colleagues as well. So it's a great way of really keeping everything in one place. And we believe it's a really, it's a really essential tool in behaviour management. And I'm really pleased that Compass is now collaborating with more and more schools in Wales as they become aware of the benefits that it has to offer. And I think having that sort of safe space to be able to record and reward as well is a really key part of, making mental well-being and behaviour something that everybody is responsible for. So, I hope people find this information really useful. I hope the report is very useful to people as well. I think, some of the findings are really sort of telling, and it doesn't just apply to children in Wales. It's obviously something that is very prevalent across the whole of the UK. But it just so happened that the work that we were doing was based around the Welsh education sector. But I look forward to working with more and more people on our sort of a way of improving well-being of children across Wales and across the UK in general, with Compass. So we have, this is one of a series of 4 webinars that we've been working on. Obviously, Rhys has been fantastic on this one, and the next one coming up. Mark, can you go to the next screen, please? The next slide, sorry. So the next webinar coming up is with Hayley. So Hayley Wheeler, who's an emotional empowerment coach. So she's going to be delivering a webinar for us on creating vibrant classrooms and strategies for fostering academic and emotional growth. That's being hosted on the 2nd of July at 4 o'clock. So if you are interested, then please watch out for our emails. You can register online and join us for another interesting discussion on the 2nd of July. Anne, I'll pass back to you.
Okay, thanks, Claire. And thanks to Rhys for that really thought-provoking and inspiring presentation. I thought it was really, really interesting. And thank you to everybody who has attended this webinar.